Thank you so much for inviting me to speak today at the 9th Global Infrastructure Leadership Forum. I'm sorry that I could not be there with you in person, but it's great to be able to share some thoughts with you. And I look forward to being briefed later by my team who are with you today. The theme of the forum says it all, is strategic projects, creating the foundation for global prosperity. Investing in global infrastructure in developing economies is a priority, not for me only, but as a CFO, but for the whole World Bank. A lack of infrastructure comes at enormous cost, both economic and social. We know that the infrastructure is critical to reducing poverty and achieving growth. Currently, more than 80% of people in emerging markets and developing economies struggle with poor infrastructure and basic service delivery. Some stark examples include at least 600 million people lack access to safe drinking water. And by 2025, 1.8 billion will live in areas with absolutely water scarcity. More than 1 billion people live without electricity today, mostly in Africa. 1/3 of the world population is not served by all-weather roads. So there are many examples. And only by closing the infrastructure gap can we together achieve our ambitious but achievable goals of ending poverty and boosting shared prosperity by 2030. In addition, in a time of lack global demand and weaker international trade, investing in infrastructure can play an important role in helping sustaining economic growth. Usually, insufficient demand reflects a lack of coordination. Well, infrastructure investment, because it is usually visible, large, and brings together a broad range of skills and activity, can be a very effective coordination device and help lift economic activity. Of course, because it also increases the capital available to a nation, to a community, it helps lift the potential output of countries and states, whatever, and tend to instill confidence, further helping to sustain growth. These features of infrastructure investment are very much present on projects aimed at addressing climate change. There, the long-term effect is also very important, with clear spillover to other business and the whole economy, as it made them more sustainable. In a time when the cost of more sustainable options increasingly is approaching the cost of traditional options, in some cases rapidly approaching them, integrating climate change consideration into infrastructure investment becomes even more important. Actually, having the potential to increase its positive impact on growth. So the importance of addressing the lack of infrastructure is very clear, and the real question is what strategies to use to get there. Here we have to consider some principles. First, I think it has become very clear that the participation of private sector will be very important. We have a long tradition of participation of private sector in the building, in the operation of infrastructure. I need more participation of private sector in the financing of infrastructure in emerging countries and even in developed countries. So addressing project risks is crucial. And as part of this, project quality will become ever more important. We know that currently the private sector provides less than 20% of the $1 trillion a year being spent in emerging markets and developing economies in infrastructure. We have to change that. First, you have to increase the total amount spent, and of course, for that, the share of private sector investment has to grow. The World Bank Group, IBRD, IFC, MIGA, we are working along this principle, and we have established already important facilities to get there. I would like to talk in a few minutes about the GIF partnership. As we at the World Bank, we are working with multilateral development partners and donors to meet this gap in infrastructure, and we know that forums like these are that important to make progress in this area. Together with our partners, we have initiated this Global Infrastructure Facility. This global collaboration platform facilitates the preparation and structuring of complex infrastructure private partnerships. Of course, you can see that in our site, World Bank PPP, is there a lot of details. But I'll tell you a few words about that and how this facility will help enable mobilization of private sector and institutional investor capital. In addition to traditional sectors, this facility will also focus on projects that are aligned with two thematic focus areas for the bank, which are climate smart projects, that those low carbon emitting that encourage energy and carbon efficiency in the provision of infrastructure services, or strengthen climate resilience. We know that climate resilience will be increasingly important to developing countries. And if you use now this approach, it means that developing countries will leapfrog on something that will be increasingly important. So our Global Investment Facility looks at that. It also looks at trade enabling projects that facilitate or enhance interconnectivity and trade. In addition to sustainability, the facility projects are being selected considering their value for money and also the potential for mobilization of private capital. Well, where are we into that? We are already $100 million in seed funds that are being used to design, prepare, and also in transactions and financial structuring of as many as 20 investments across the globe. In addition, the facility is developing a credit enhancement window to mobilize private financing for the projects that we'll be supporting. And then, of course, other projects, since the objective of this facility obviously is not to cover the whole market, but create new models. The facility has established an advisory council, which combines commercial, institutional, bilateral, and multilateral financiers of infrastructure, who together have over 12 trillion in assets under management. Of course, this is an exercise of listening to different partners, see what are the needs, how we can respond to their needs so they can channel resources for these big endeavors. The facility brings resources and partner expertise to sustainable infrastructure investments. And this really is a huge partnership. And they have, the private sector, a tremendous role in meeting the infrastructure gap, and we have to provide the environment, the conditions for this to happen. I think, as I mentioned, that investing in infrastructure provides a prime opportunity to the private sector, to institutional investors, in a moment where interest rates continue to remain very low. We know that you have to address a number of issues and come up with instruments to help mobilize this private sector capital. So, for instance, in addition to create mechanisms to enhance risk profile of project bonds, for instance, we have to work hard to develop some essential elements for a market-based approach, such as benchmarks for investment projects, infrastructure projects, as well as for project bonds, so that a larger share of fixed income managers and pension funds and others will have the comfort to explore this new market. To develop and implement these and other mechanisms to mobilize global savings, we will continue to work with our partners in financial markets and the real sector. And internally, we are working very hard to expand the availability of instruments such as World Bank Group guarantees through MIGA, IFC, and IBRD. Instruments adequately tailored and priced to help firms and governments to have larger access to finance, private finance. Let me conclude by saying that the World Bank Group is ready and able to work with you in this big endeavor. Our three institutions want to work together to support you with all the best we have. IBRD with its development expertise, country presence, and convening power. IFC, our dynamic private sector arm with all the range of instruments and the experience that they have. And MIGA, providing an increasing range of guarantees. We are really fundamentally committed to this, and I would like to commend Mr. Anderson, Norman Anderson, for this great initiative of pulling everybody together to really move forward in this, that one of the major challenges for our time. Thank you all, and I look forward to collaborating with you in many and consistent ways. Thank you very much.